We're making good progress. Now it's time to take the strut assembly apart and build a new one. Some of you may be thinking, Steve, you already bought the strut, the spring, the bushing. What do you need off of this? Well, the strut does not come with the upper strut mount bracket, which comes off of here, and I may need this nut. I'm gonna need the strut boot as well. Let's start compressing the spring. Now you definitely wanna be careful while doing this. I've heard that these have enough tension in them that they can actually kill people if they spring open. I don't know if that's an exaggeration or not, but best not to find out. Taking the spring off will also let me show you side by side the old spring versus the new spring. I can already tell that they're pretty different. I just got it started a little bit. Now it's time to put these retaining pins in. Well, that's not the most confidence improving thing I've ever seen. It slides all the way in with the spring in place, so it doesn't fill me with a whole lot of confidence that they're gonna stay put. There's that little spring ball in there that holds it in place, and if that's not gonna do it, then this definitely isn't gonna help. But on yours, definitely put those rings in, just in case. The idea is, oh, that is bent. Look at that. Look at that wobble. This thing is brand new. Why is that rod bent? That's annoying. The idea with these is that if something causes this to like rapidly compress and decompress, these pins will keep it from bouncing out of here, expanding beyond what you've compressed it to. I really doubt we're going to encounter that today. If we do, it's going to be a whole lot of trouble. I feel like anytime there's a safety thing, you should know the reasoning behind it. When I was in school, I absolutely hated the just to do it mentality. A lot of teachers would think that if you're questioning the safety procedure, you're just being a pain. On top of just curiosity, there's even the ability to make a safe thing even safer if you know what it's supposed to do. Like if someone put these in and thinks, oh, they just need to be in place, and they might put those rings in and just have it sitting up as high as they go, it's doing nothing for safety. If you know what it's doing, then you can be safer. Yeah, I thought this was only going to need a little bit of compression to loosen it up from here, but it is on pretty compressed. Let's see how this does. Gotta do that again. Where's that 10 millimeter? All right, I'm gonna hammer this thing on. This is where you can run into trouble if you're not doing this safely, because every time you hammer it, you're shaking it this direction, and that can loosen this up if you've done something wrong. Sweet. Here's the nut. I'm gonna save that. Oh boy. I'm glad the bushing I got came with a new one of these. Jeez. Now it's time to loosen this up. Do this slowly and alternate between the clamps frequently. Either way you're doing this, if you compress on one side too much or decompress on one side too much, the spring shape may actually send one of these flying around to the other one, and you can see my hands here. If that happens, my fingers are going to be in bad shape. I really should be holding down here. And that's how you do that. There we go. One clamp off. Now there's a hose clamp holding on the bottom of this bellows. Probably should have taken that off before I did this, because the spring is really pushing this thing apart. Well, that's not in great shape. There's what's left of the bearing. All right, taking note of this little arrow mark on here. It is facing away from where the strut mounts to the steering knuckle, where these two bolts go through, because it is facing towards the engine. Have to remember that when we reassemble the new strut with this component on it. It's not in great shape. There's even a little bit of cracking here, but you really can't get these things anymore, so just gonna have to reuse it. You can see where the spring sat in there. It's almost like day one shiny rubber. That's the original spring. That's the new one. Definitely more windings in this one. It looks like they're about the same diameter. This one looks a little bit thicker. This one's also taller, which is why it took so long to unwind the compressor all the way to where it actually came off. this one's going to be easier to install. Since we're comparing old to new right now, I've got the strut bushings, and a funny note on this, I've known about this problem for so long. It wasn't always as bad as it is now, but I've known to replace these for a while. I've had these for so long that the warranty is up on them. Hopefully they're right. I've had these for, I think, 2 years now. These are way stiffer than this. And look at the difference on the height. Time to wake up. Here's the old strut. I'm gonna pull it out a little bit. And it goes back in, but super slowly. And watch this decompression. It just sinks on its own weight. Just the weight of the strut itself sinks it. And gets the rest of the way. Bottom down. And then I pull it up. I don't think it's coming out. As compared to this, there it goes. That does not look like a one-time use nut. That is not a one-time use nut. Since there's no difference top to bottom, it doesn't matter which way you load it on this spring, it goes on into this pocket right here. Man, this one has that same design. I've seen some struts that have, instead of this one that sticks out, it's an inner one, which I guess has its own problems. But I like the idea of the inner one because if there's a nut right there and your other tool goes in, you can't really strip it by expanding it out because there's a nut on top of it holding it together, and the nut has to break before this can really strip out too bad. Alright, another thing I've heard about these is that it's possible to put this on wrong, and if it's like seated, this one seems to go on really easy and not like to be in any bad position, probably due to its different design, but it's possible to put this on wrong and it will like sit on the side and it'll start out okay, but eventually it'll start grinding and then tearing up the bearing, and then you gotta do this whole process over again. If the bump stop is not refitted and in good condition, the warranty may be voided. Well, my warranty's gone, but I would rather not wear this out prematurely. That's why they put those warnings in, because it's gonna wear it out. Silicone spray is usually a lubricant, but I like how it cleans rubber components. Well, you can definitely say it revitalizes dried out rubber. The cracks are still there, but it should soften it up to the point where the cracks don't expand. That looks pretty good. It's not perfect, but if buying a new one is possible at this point, it's way cheaper than buying a new one. It takes less time than buying a new one too. I'm gonna see what I can do about that bump stop. I'm definitely glad I'm working on this inside. The weather's pretty nasty outside. This might delay the parts that I'm waiting on though. Got a pair of bump stops and tie rod ends on their way. Before I even touch anything, I suspect that this would have been a whole lot easier to take off had I loosened it while the strut was still attached. Hopefully that assembly is heavy enough to break this loose without much trouble though. Oh yeah, that's not too bad. Doesn't look like that bushing's too happy. These bushings, when stock, are fluid filled, like the rubber with a fluid inside. And I suspect that the fluid has long leaked out of them, but I imagine there's a pocket in there that has old water and who knows what dirt in there. And when I took that nut off and exposed this, I don't know if that was what did it, but there's a nasty water smell coming out from underneath the car now. That is a new smell for me. I've never smelled anything like that. I was using a creeper, but the car is not high enough off the ground for that to be comfortable. So I'm on the concrete now. There we go. Whew, yeah, that was the that was the bushing. All right, now that we have that off, we can take out that nut on the other end that we loosened up earlier, and this rod will probably come out, but we don't really need to do that, but it'll get it out of the way so we can put in this new bushing and the new bushing on that end. Here's the rod. The longer work shaft goes towards the front, the shorter one goes towards the back. Yep, that needed to go. Oh, that's coming out. There it is. There's a lot of rust in there. This doesn't feel too bad, but I'm going to clean it up with the brass brush. That's better. I was all ready to pop these things in, and I remembered I've got another bushing up there that I need to replace. I really need to get this rotor off. I need a breaker bar for this, I need a fork or a press for this, and I don't even know what I need for the rotor. So, I'm at a stopping point right now. Had to go hunting for a second 19mm socket, one in particular that is not a deep wall. This grip tight thing that I've broken one of these already. I've got a 13mm that's busted from its first job, so. And I don't think I've got any other non-deep wall 19mm sockets, so if this thing breaks, I'm gonna be stuck for a while. Actually, I'm gonna switch these. There we go. More rust on this car than I thought. Still not too bad. Gonna need to put this on something to get this thing out. Nice. Finally. That doesn't look like it was rusted onto the main bearing surface. Yeah, I think it was just seized onto. There's a lot of goo in there. Yeah, it was probably just seized onto that. Jeez. Alright, didn't have to do anything too nasty with the bearings, so should be able to reuse that. I mean, everything else, everything I've messed with on here has been bad, unless it's been something I've replaced already. I probably should just replace this anyway, but if it causes any trouble, it's not that hard to get to. Eventually you'll get to the point where you encounter a bushing that you just can't hammer out or just brute force remove from the control arm or other component with a bushing. So what do? You get this huge bushing kit. This one in particular is a rental. When you open it, there's a bunch of rings and cups and a C-clamp. You'll definitely be using the C-clamp components. And as you can see, this isn't some sponsored, check out this shiny brand new rental kit. This is legit what you end up getting sometimes. There's crusty grease in here. There are a handful of bushings that you can push out either way, but most of them are going to have a flat side that rests up against the surface that it mounts to, and the other side is going to be exposed, and that's the side you can push inward. Start out by finding a cup that fits over it and it's going to stay put on. This one's a little too big, but we might have to use that one because there's not a lot of room here to work. And since this is the side that's exposed, you're gonna push it this way, which means you're gonna need a cup that will give it space to move this way. And you'll also need to be big enough that it rests outside of the flange on this bushing, but small enough that it doesn't walk around like this. That might do the trick right there. So we've built the back half. Now we're gonna need this end. All right, that's looking good. Now ideally you'd want this in a vise or something so you can hold it still. I don't have one of those. For starters, work with your components, not against them. You can rest this on top of stuff. You can even use these as little things to set the clamp on top of while it's being put into place. All right, now we've got everything clamped together. It's kind of just sitting here. I'm gonna tighten this, but as soon as I do that, this is resting on rubber, so it's probably gonna wanna wobble back and forth, and it's probably gonna slip out in some form. If that happens, try it one way, see what it does, adapt your technique. Yeah, so far it's just squashing the rubber. You might be able to see this isn't lined up perfectly, so that may slip out. It's also a lot easier to do this when you're not wired up to a camera with a microphone that wants to sit under your foot when you move around. All right, we gotta take this back down. Don't think we made any progress, but we'll see. All we've done so far is just damaged the rubber inside. No progress yet. So we built it one way and it didn't work. Let's build it differently. So we can put the cup on this side too. That seems like a good idea. See, the problem with this one, this flange here, it sticks out really far on this control arm. There's not a whole lot to grab onto. Most control arms aren't like that. Most of them are gonna have more meat on the arm that you can put one of these on. This would be bigger. That one's too small too. There we go, that's gonna work. And I guess I'm just gonna have to squash the rubber a bit on that side. Whew, that just barely fits. This doesn't look straight. Can't really do anything about that without taking it back apart. This would also be nice if I had a ratchet that was 1/4 inch instead of just breaker bar. You really need a vise for something like this. No turning back now. I got this box recently. These are the parts that I need to finish the suspension project, hopefully. Just to cover up the address and whatnot. That's a part I just ordered so I can get free shipping. It's either pay for shipping and it'd be the same price, or free part. Free part it is. These are the bump stops for the front struts. They feel a little squishy and soft compared to the polyurethane of everything else that they make. It's probably got some air to give it some give. You definitely don't want something super solid as a bump stop. Tie rod ends. Whew, yeah, that is a lot stiffer than what's on there right now. The one that I've got just flops back and forth. This brand seems to be the only one left that makes these things for the GTO. It's not greasable. I wish it was, but that's one of the downsides of working on a car that has a low production run. You don't have there's not a lot of companies that see it as a worthwhile investment to design manufacturing for the part, or to even source it. Now I can build my strut tower, and as soon as that's done and the control arm is done, I can reassemble everything. Oh, and I picked up this thread locker gel, nothing too special. All that's left to do now is bolt it to the steering knuckle down here, and after it goes up through the top of the strut tower on the car, there's a giant metal rubber washer that goes on top of here, and then a second nut that spins on the top, and it's held in place. All right, that bushing has been quite a pain, so I bought another tool and rented another toolkit. Let's see if this will do the job. That steering knuckle might not be coming off of that at all, so I'm going to continue on this bushing. I'm going to break out this new kit. It's not meant for bushings, I don't think, but I think it'll help on this particular application. Specifically, this. That's looking good. So far, so good. Alright, so that's just pushing the metal core out and a little bit of the rubber. I need the metal shell out. You're not supposed to use sockets with this. I hope this thing's strong enough to deal with this. And I'm putting it in backwards, so these walls are not doing any work at all. It's just from the back end of the socket to the edges, trying to make it push this out on the edge. Jeez. Oh boy, what snapped? Maybe it was the bushing? Maybe. Looks like it might be coming out. Whew. That didn't feel good. Oh yeah, that's the bushing popping out. Nice. Awesome. And the socket's not damaged. There's a little bit of a circle in there telling the tale of what happened, but we got the bushing out. No flames, no... Well, I guess there's some special tools, but you can rent them. Man, what a pain. Interesting, there's like two different layers. This thing presses in just on that one side. Yeah, well, good riddance. The kit that included this actually has a tool that might actually do this job, so I'll give it a try. Nice. Yeah. Job complete. All right, I finally got the entire suspension apart. The driver's side, I know, but everything that I learned working on that side, I can take to the other side and make it that much faster. Because this control arm is exposed to the elements so much, I think I'm gonna take the rust off of this and give it a new coat of paint. While I'm prepping this for paint, I'll also clean up these openings a bit more so the bushings have something more clean to rest in. I know it probably doesn't matter, but I've always been a stickler for clean parts, and I like having the part super clean so I know that dirt isn't going to get in there and ruin it prematurely. And it's really cool that I got this whole thing apart. I was thinking at the end that I might not be able to get that the ball joint disconnected from the steering knuckle, and I did, so there we go. Driver's side suspension has been completely disassembled. On the next episode, I'm cleaning up some parts and putting in the shiny new ones, which apart from driving it for the first time after all the new parts are in, that's my favorite part. This episode has been the longest video I've ever uploaded to this channel up until this point, so thank you for sticking through to the end. I know it's way longer than what I usually make, so very much appreciated. Thanks for sticking with it, and I'll see you in the next episode.